Chapter 1. The Mysterious Invitation. Hercule Poirot sat at his polished mahogany desk in his London flat, the morning sun filtering through the curtains, casting a soft glow on the neatly arranged papers before him. The aroma of his customary tisane filled the air, its steam curling upward like a wisp of thought. He was a man of precision, his moustache impeccably waxed, his suit tailored to perfection, and his mind as sharp as the letter opener he now held in his delicate hands. The letter before him, however, was anything but precise. Its cryptic tone had piqued his curiosity, a rare feat for a man who prided himself on seeing through the fog of human deception. The envelope, postmarked from Yorkshire, bore no return address, only the name Ashworth Hall embossed in elegant script. The letter itself was brief, written in a hurried hand, yet it carried an air of urgency that intrigued Poirot. It read, "Monsieur Poirot, your reputation as a solver of mysteries precedes you. I humbly request your presence at Ashworth Hall this weekend for a gathering of consequence. Strange occurrences plague this house, whispers of a phantom that unsettles all who dwell here. Your discretion and intellect are needed. A car will collect you Friday at noon. Yours, in confidence, a friend." Poirot's lips twitched beneath his moustache. A phantom? Mon Dieu, he thought, the English and their ghosts. Yet the anonymity of the sender and the vagueness of the plea suggested more than superstition. This was no mere ghost story. It was a puzzle, and Poirot was never one to resist a puzzle. He set the letter down, his fingers drumming lightly on the desk as he considered. The invitation was unusual, yes, but it was the word discretion that lingered in his mind. Whoever wrote this feared exposure, perhaps of a secret, perhaps of a crime. He glanced at the clock. It was Wednesday, giving him 2 days to prepare. His trusted friend, Captain Hastings, was away visiting family, so Poirot would face this mystery alone. He preferred it that way, for Hastings, though loyal, often muddled the clarity of les petites cellules grises, the little grey cells. Poirot rose, straightened his tie, and decided to accept the invitation. A weekend in the countryside might be refreshing, and if there was mischief afoot, he would uncover it. Friday arrived with a drizzle that cloaked London in a grey veil. At precisely noon, a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up outside Poirot's flat. The driver, a taciturn man with a weathered face, introduced himself as Mr. Grayson, the chauffeur of Ashworth Hall. He spoke little, answering Poirot's polite inquiries with monosyllables, which only deepened the detective's curiosity. The journey to Yorkshire was long, the roads winding through misty moors that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. Poirot, ever observant, noted the driver's nervous glances in the rearview mirror, as if expecting pursuit, or perhaps something less tangible. As evening approached, the car turned onto a gravel drive flanked by ancient oaks. Ahead loomed Ashworth Hall, a sprawling Elizabethan manor that seemed to rise from the fog like a spectre itself. Its stone facade was grand but weathered, ivy clinging to its walls as if trying to hold the crumbling structure together. The windows glowed faintly, suggesting life within, yet the air felt heavy with an unspoken dread. Poirot stepped out, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel, and adjusted his hat. The driver unloaded his small suitcase and gestured toward the entrance before retreating to the car without a word. The heavy oak door creaked open, revealing a butler whose stiff posture and pale complexion suggested he had seen more than his share of the hall's mysteries. "Monsieur Poirot, I presume?" he said, his voice low and formal. "I am Reynolds, the butler." Welcome to Ashworth Hall. The master awaits you in the drawing room." Poirot nodded, his sharp eyes taking in the grand hall as he followed Reynolds. The interior was a study in faded opulence, high ceilings adorned with chipped plasterwork, portraits of stern-faced ancestors lining the walls, and a chandelier that flickered as if struggling to stay alight. The air smelled of old wood and wax polish, tinged with something less definable. Fear, perhaps. Poirot's instincts told him that this house held secrets, and not all of them were supernatural. In the drawing room, a fire crackled in a massive hearth, casting shadows that danced across the faces of the gathered guests. The host, Sir Reginald Ashworth, rose to greet Poirot. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with silver hair and a weary expression that belied his aristocratic bearing. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, shaking his hand with a grip that was firm but fleeting, "I am deeply grateful you've come. We are troubled here. Troubled, you say?" Poirot's eyes twinkled with curiosity. "By what precisely, Sir Reginald?" The room fell silent, the other guests, a mix of family and strangers, exchanging uneasy glances. A young woman with auburn hair, introduced as Lady Eleanor Ashworth, Sir Reginald's daughter, spoke first. "It's the phantom, Monsieur Poirot. It haunts this house, appearing in the dead of night, moving objects, whispering in the shadows. It's driven us to the edge." Poirot's moustache twitched again. "A phantom, mademoiselle? C'est intéressant. Tell me, what does this phantom look like?" Lady Eleanor hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap. "It's a figure in white, fleeting like mist. Some say it's the ghost of Lady Margaret, who died here a century ago under mysterious circumstances." Others nodded, their faces pale. There was Mr. Charles Wentworth, a solicitor with a nervous tic, Mrs. Clara Beaumont, a widowed cousin with sharp eyes, and Dr. Alistair Finch, a local physician who seemed more sceptical than frightened. A few other guests, distant relatives, and a journalist named Miss Violet Crane, completed the group. Each, Poirot noted, carried an air of unease, as if they feared more than just a ghost. Sir Reginald cleared his throat. "Monsieur Poirot, I confess I did not write that letter inviting you. I don't know who did. But now that you're here, I beg you to help us. These disturbances are tearing my family apart." Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting every detail. The way Mrs. Beaumont's fingers clutched her necklace, the way Miss Crane's pen hovered over her notebook, the way Dr. Finch avoided eye contact. Someone in this room, he suspected, knew more than they were saying. "Bien," he said at last, his voice calm but commanding. "I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth. Ghost or no ghost, there is always a reason for such disturbances, and I shall find it." As the group dispersed for dinner, Poirot lingered by the fire, his mind already at work. The letter's anonymity, the phantom's appearances, the tension among the guests, all were pieces of a puzzle. He would need to observe, to listen, to let his little grey cells unravel the threads. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, and for a moment Poirot thought he heard a faint whisper, like a voice from the shadows. He smiled faintly. The game, as his friend Hastings might say, was afoot. Chapter 2. Arrival at the haunted estate. The fog clung to Ashworth Hall like a shroud as Hercule Poirot stepped from the Rolls-Royce, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the damp gravel. The manor loomed before him, its Elizabethan grandeur marred by time and neglect. The stone facade, pockmarked by centuries of Yorkshire weather, seemed to absorb the fading light, and the tall windows stared down like unblinking eyes. Poirot adjusted his hat, his sharp gaze sweeping the surroundings. The air was heavy with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. And a faint chill whispered through the oaks lining the drive. This was no ordinary country house. It was a place that held its secrets tightly, and Poirot was determined to pry them loose. Reynolds, the butler, led him through the creaking oak door into the grand hall. The interior was a paradox, opulent yet decaying, with intricate wood panelling marred by cracks and a massive chandelier that flickered as if reluctant to illuminate the shadows. Portraits of Ashworth ancestors lined the walls, their painted eyes following Poirot with silent judgment. He noted the faded tapestries, the worn rugs, and the faint smell of mildew beneath the polish. Mon Dieu, he thought, this house is as much a character as its inhabitants. Reynolds guided him to his room on the second floor, a spacious chamber with heavy drapes and a four-poster bed that creaked under its own weight. "Dinner will be served at 7, Monsieur Poirot," the butler said, his voice as stiff as his posture. "The master hopes you'll join the family and guests in the dining room." Poirot nodded, dismissing him with a polite smile, and set about unpacking his small suitcase. His movements were precise, each item placed with care, but his mind was elsewhere, already cataloguing the peculiarities of Ashworth Hall. At dinner, Poirot was introduced to the full assembly of guests, a motley group whose interactions hinted at underlying tensions. Sir Reginald Ashworth presided at the head of the long oak table, his silver hair catching the candlelight. To his right sat Lady Eleanor, his daughter, her auburn curls framing a face that was both delicate and strained. Across from her was Charles Wentworth, the solicitor, whose nervous tic, a twitching eyelid, betrayed his discomfort. Mrs. Clara Beaumont, the widowed cousin, toyed with her pearl necklace, her sharp eyes darting between speakers. Dr. Alistair Finch, the local physician, sat with a sceptical frown, while Miss Violet Crane, the journalist, scribbled notes with a fervour that suggested she was hunting a story. Rounding out the group were two distant relatives. Mr. Henry Ashworth, a dour man in his 40s with a penchant for whisky, and Miss Beatrice Lyle, a quiet spinster whose gaze rarely left her plate. The meal was lavish, roast pheasant, glazed vegetables, and a fine claret. But the atmosphere was anything but festive. Conversation faltered, punctuated by the clink of cutlery and the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. Poirot, ever observant, noted the way Sir Reginald avoided his daughter's eyes, the way Wentworth's hands trembled when questioned about his work, and the way Miss Crane's questions were met with curt replies. These were not people at ease, and Poirot suspected the so-called phantom was only part of their unease. It was Lady Eleanor who first broached the subject of the haunting, her voice soft but laced with fear. "Monsieur Poirot, you must think us foolish, believing in ghosts, but the phantom of Ashworth Hall is real. It's been seen by many, servants, guests, even father." She glanced at Sir Reginald, who nodded grimly. "Tell me, mademoiselle," Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing. "What is known of this phantom? Its history? Its habits?" Sir Reginald cleared his throat. "The legend dates back to 1823, when Lady Margaret Ashworth, my great-great-grandmother, died under tragic circumstances. She was found at the base of the grand staircase, her neck broken. Some say she fell, others that she was pushed. Since then her spirit is said to roam the hall, appearing in white, always at night. Objects move, doors slam, and whispers echo where no one stands." Mrs. Beaumont shivered, clutching her pearls. "It's true. I saw her myself last month, a figure in white, gliding past the library. I nearly fainted." Dr. Finch snorted. Superstition, nothing more. Old houses creak and shadows play tricks. There's no ghost, just overactive imaginations." Miss Crane's pen paused, her eyes gleaming. "But what about the missing jewels, Doctor? Or the locked room that opened on its own? I've been researching this for weeks. There's a story here, ghost or not." Poirot's moustache twitched. A story indeed, he thought. The journalist's eagerness suggested she knew more than she let on, and Dr. Finch's dismissal seemed too vehement to be entirely genuine. He turned to Sir Reginald. "These disturbances, they have increased recently, oui?" "Yes," Sir Reginald admitted. "In the past 6 months, they've grown worse. Servants have quit, guests refuse to return, and my family." He trailed off, glancing at Eleanor, who looked down at her plate. Henry Ashworth drained his glass and leaned forward, his voice slurred. "It's a curse, that's what it is. This house is damned, and we're all paying for it." "Henry, enough!" Eleanor snapped, her cheeks flushing. The table fell silent, the tension palpable. Poirot sipped his wine, his eyes never leaving the group. "C'est curieux," he said softly. "A phantom that grows bolder, a family in distress, and a letter that brings me here without a name. Tell me, who among you might wish for my presence?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Eyes darted, hands fidgeted, and Poirot noted each reaction. Someone, or something, had summoned him to this haunted estate, and he was determined to uncover why. After dinner, as the guests retired to the drawing-room, Poirot lingered in the hall, studying the grand staircase where Lady Margaret had met her end. The polished wood gleamed, but the shadows above seemed to shift, as if watching. He smiled faintly. "Pas de fantôme, Hercule Poirot," he murmured. "Only secrets waiting to be found." As he turned to join the others, a faint creak echoed from the upper landing. He paused, his head tilted, but no sound followed. The house was alive, he thought, not with ghosts, but with the weight of its past. And Poirot, with his little grey cells, would unravel it all. Chapter 3. Whispers of the Past. The morning after his arrival at Ashworth Hall, Hercule Poirot stood by a tall window in the drawing-room, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes tracing the mist that clung to the Yorkshire moors beyond. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of its ancient timbers, as if it were breathing secrets. Breakfast had been a subdued affair, the guests exchanging strained pleasantries while avoiding mention of the phantom. Yet Poirot sensed the spectre's presence in their silences, in the way their gazes flickered toward the shadowed corners of the room. He had come to unravel a mystery, and this morning he would begin by listening. For the truth, he knew, often hid in the whispers of the past. After breakfast, Sir Reginald invited Poirot to join him in the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound volumes and heavy oak furniture. The air smelled of dust and old paper, and a fire crackled in the hearth, doing little to dispel the chill. Lady Eleanor, Mrs. Clara Beaumont, and Miss Violet Crane joined them, while the others dispersed to their rooms or the gardens. Poirot noted the selection of guests with interest. Each seemed eager to share, or perhaps to control, the narrative of Ashworth Hall's haunting. Sir Reginald began, his voice low and measured. "Monsieur Poirot, you asked about the phantom's history last night. I suppose it's only fair you know the full story of Lady Margaret Ashworth, since her spirit seems to be at the heart of this." He gestured to a portrait above the fireplace, a striking image of a woman in a white gown, her dark eyes intense, her expression tinged with melancholy. "That's her, painted a year before her death in 1823. Poirot studied the portrait, noting the delicate hands folded in her lap, the faint smile that hinted at secrets. "She was beautiful, oui? And her death, it was tragic, you said. Tell me more." Sir Reginald sighed, sinking into an armchair. "Lady Margaret was married to Lord Edmund Ashworth, my great-grandfather's uncle. She was young, vibrant, but troubled. There were rumours of an affair, of debts, of a family feud. One stormy night, she was found at the bottom of the grand staircase, her neck broken. The coroner ruled it an accident, but whispers persisted that she was pushed, perhaps by Lord Edmund, perhaps by a rival. The family never recovered from the scandal." Mrs. Beaumont, seated near the fire, clutched her pearls and leaned forward. "It's more than scandal, Sir Reginald. The servants say Lady Margaret's spirit never left. They've seen her for generations, always in white, always near the staircase or the east wing. She moves things, leaves cold spots, whispers names in the dark." Her voice trembled, but Poirot noted a gleam in her eyes, as if fear mingled with fascination. Lady Eleanor, standing by a bookshelf, shook her head. "It's not just servants' tales, Clara. I've seen her too. Last month, I woke to find my room freezing, my jewellery box open, and a white figure vanishing through the door. I'm not fanciful, Monsieur Poirot, but I know what I saw." Miss Crane, scribbling in her notebook, looked up with a sharp smile. "I've been researching Ashworth Hall for my article. The phantom isn't the only mystery. There's a missing sapphire necklace, Lady Margaret's, supposedly cursed. It vanished the night she died and reappears every few decades, only to disappear again. Some say the phantom guards it." Poirot's moustache twitched. A necklace, a ghost, a death. How convenient for a story, he thought. He turned to Sir Reginald. "This necklace, it is valuable, oui? And these disturbances, they began 6 months ago. Was there an event, perhaps, that stirred the past?" Sir Reginald hesitated, glancing at Eleanor, who looked away. "6 months ago," he said slowly, "we began renovations in the East Wing. We found papers, old letters, hidden in a wool. They hinted at Lady Margaret's affair and a possible heir no one knew about. I thought it best to keep them private, but the disturbances started soon after." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "C'est intéressant. Letters, you say. May I see them?" "They were destroyed," Eleanor interjected quickly, her cheeks flushing. "Burned accidentally during the renovations. A careless worker, I'm afraid." Poirot nodded, but his mind was racing. Destroyed or hidden? He made a mental note to investigate the East Wing later. For now, he turned to Miss Crane. "Mademoiselle, your research, has it uncovered other incidents tied to this phantom?" Violet Crane's pen paused, her eyes narrowing as if weighing how much to reveal. "There have been deaths," she said at last, "not just Lady Margaret. In 1875, a maid fell from the East Wing balcony, claiming she'd been pushed by a figure in white. In 1920, a guest, a historian researching the Ashworths, disappeared after claiming he'd seen the phantom. His body was never found." Mrs. Beaumont gasped, but Poirot remained impassive, his little grey cells sorting the information. "And these recent disturbances," he said, "they involve more than sightings now. Objects moved, doors unlocked." "Yes," Sir Reginald admitted. "Books fall from shelves, mirrors crack, and last week a locked door in the East Wing was found ajar. The servants are terrified, and I can't blame them." Poirot paced slowly, his hands behind his back. "Mon Dieu, a busy phantom, this one. But tell me, who else resides in this house? Servants, perhaps, with their own stories." Reynolds, who had entered to replenish the fire, paused at the question. "There are 5 of us, sir," he said stiffly. "Myself, the housekeeper, Mrs. Dobbs, 2 maids, and the gardener. We've all seen things." Mrs. Dobbs swears she heard Lady Margaret's voice calling her name last week. Poirot nodded, noting the butler's hesitation. Merci, Reynolds. I may speak with you all later. As the butler left, Poirot turned back to the group. This phantom, it seems, is selective in its mischief. I wonder, does it seek to frighten or to reveal? The room fell silent, the crackle of the fire the only sound. Poirot's gaze swept over the guests, catching the way Eleanor twisted her hands, the way Mrs. Beaumont's eyes darted to the portrait, the way Miss Crane's pen hovered, as if poised to capture a confession. Sir Reginald stared into the flames, his face etched with worry. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered in the library, approaching Lady Margaret's portrait. Her eyes seemed to follow him, and for a moment he felt a chill, not of fear, but of anticipation. The past was speaking, he was certain, and not through ghosts. The letters, the necklace, the deaths, all were threads in a tapestry of deception. He would need to tread carefully, for someone in Ashworth Hall was weaving a lie, and Poirot intended to unravel it. Outside, the wind moaned, and a distant door creaked shut. Poirot smiled faintly. Pas de fantôme, Hercule Poirot, he murmured. Only the truth, waiting to be found. Chapter 4. The Midnight Apparition. The clock in Ashworth Hall's Grand Hall struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the silent corridors like a warning. Hercule Poirot, unable to sleep, sat in his room, his notebook open on the mahogany desk. The flickering light of a single candle illuminated his neat handwriting, where he had recorded the day's observations. The strained dynamics among the guests, the tale of Lady Margaret's death, the missing sapphire necklace, and the mysterious letters supposedly destroyed. His little grey cells were restless, piecing together the puzzle of the phantom that plagued this ancient manor. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, as if anticipating the next disturbance. A sudden scream shattered the stillness, high and piercing, coming from the direction of the east wing. Poirot sprang to his feet with surprising agility for a man of his stature. Slipping on his dressing gown and seizing his silver-topped cane, not for support, but as a precaution, he stepped into the corridor, where shadows danced on the walls, cast by the flickering sconces. The air was cold, unnaturally so, and carried a faint scent of lavender, a detail Poirot filed away as he hurried toward the source of the cry. He reached the East Wing's landing, where a small crowd had already gathered. Lady Eleanor Ashworth stood trembling, her nightgown clutched tightly around her, her auburn hair dishevelled. Beside her, Mrs. Clara Beaumont clutched a candelabrum, her face pale as moonlight. Sir Reginald, in a hastily donned robe, was trying to calm his daughter, while Miss Violet Crane hovered nearby, her notebook already in hand. Charles Wentworth and Dr. Alistair Finch arrived moments later, their expressions a mix of fear and scepticism. "Monsieur Poirot!" Eleanor gasped, her voice quivering. "I saw it! The phantom!" It was there, at the end of the corridor, a figure in white gliding towards the staircase. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his moustache twitching as he surveyed the scene. "Calmez-vous, mademoiselle. Describe exactly what you saw, if you please." Eleanor took a shuddering breath. "I couldn't sleep, so I came to fetch a book from the library. As I reached the corridor, I saw it. A woman in a flowing white gown, her face pale, her eyes empty. She moved without sound, then vanished around the corner. I screamed, and it was gone." Mrs. Beaumont nodded vigorously. "I heard Eleanor's cry and came running. I didn't see the figure, but I felt a chill, like a breath of ice, and smelled lavender. It's Lady Margaret, I'm sure of it." Dr. Finch snorted, adjusting his glasses. Nonsense. A trick of the light, or perhaps someone playing a prank. Old houses like this are full of draughts. Miss Crane's, oh, pen scratched furiously. A prank, Doctor? Then why did the air turn cold? And that lavender scent? Eleanor, did you smell it too? Eleanor nodded, her hands trembling. Yes, it was strong, like perfume from another time. Poirot raised a hand for silence, his gaze sweeping the corridor. The east wing was dimly lit, its walls lined with faded tapestries and locked doors. At the far end, the grand staircase descended into darkness, the very spot where Lady Margaret had met her end. He approached the corner where Eleanor claimed the phantom had vanished, his eyes scanning for clues. The floorboards were polished but uneven, and he noted a faint scuff mark, barely visible in the candlelight. Kneeling, he examined it closely, a smudge of white chalk as if something had brushed against the wood. Interessant, he murmured, rising. This chalk, it is not from the house's natural dust. Someone has been here, perhaps to create an effect. Sir Reginald frowned. You think this is a hoax, Monsieur Poirot? I think, Sir Reginald, that a phantom who leaves chalk is a phantom with a purpose. May, let us investigate further. He gestured toward the staircase. The figure moved this way, oui? Let us follow. The group, reluctant but curious, trailed Poirot as he descended the staircase, his cane tapping lightly on each step. The air grew colder as they reached the grand hall, where the chandelier swayed slightly, though no breeze was evident. Poirot paused, his senses alert. The lavender scent lingered, faint but unmistakable. He approached a side table near the staircase, where a silver tray held a decanter and glasses. One glass was slightly askew, its rim bearing a faint trace of moisture. Curieux, Poirot said, lifting the glass to the light. This has been used recently, yet the servants have not cleared it. And this moisture, it is not wine. He sniffed delicately, his nose wrinkling. Water, perhaps, with a hint of lavande. Miss Crane's eyes widened. You mean someone staged the phantom's appearance? With lavender water? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. I mean only that the facts must be examined, mademoiselle. A phantom who drinks water and leaves chalk is perhaps less ghostly than we are led to believe. Wentworth, his tic more pronounced, shifted uncomfortably. But why? Who would go to such lengths? That, Poirot said, is what I intend to discover. For now, let us return to our rooms. The night is not yet done with its surprises, I think. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes fixed on the staircase. He climbed back to the landing, retracing the phantom's path. Near the corridor's end, he found another clue. A single pearl, small and unremarkable, half hidden beneath a rug. He pocketed it, his mind racing. A pearl, chalk, lavender water. These were not the tools of a ghost, but of a human with a motive. Was the phantom meant to frighten, to distract, or to conceal something deeper? Back in his room, Poirot added these details to his notebook, his pen moving with precision. The phantom's appearance had rattled the household, but it had also revealed something vital. Someone was orchestrating these events, and they were careless enough to leave traces. He thought of Eleanor's trembling voice, Mrs. Beaumont's eager corroboration, Miss Crane's relentless note-taking, and Dr. Finch's dismissive skepticism. Each guest, he suspected, held a piece of the truth, whether they knew it or not. As he blew out the candle, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows. A faint creak sounded from the corridor, but Poirot did not stir. Pas de fantôme, he whispered to himself, his eyes gleaming in the dark. Only a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot will solve it. Chapter 5. Suspicions and Secrets. The morning sun struggled to pierce the heavy fog enveloping Ashworth Hall, casting a pallid glow through the tall windows of the morning room. Hercule Poirot sat at a small table, his tisane steaming beside him, his notebook open to a fresh page. The events of the previous night, the scream, the phantom's fleeting appearance, the chalk mark, the lavender-scented glass, and the solitary pearl had set his little grey cells buzzing. The phantom of Ashworth Hall was no spectre, he was certain, but a carefully crafted illusion. The question was not whether it was human, but why and who. Today he would probe deeper, stirring the pot of secrets simmering among the household. After breakfast, Poirot requested private interviews with the guests, a tactic he employed to observe their unguarded moments. Sir Reginald, ever the gracious host, arranged for the library to be used, its heavy silence ideal for coaxing truths from reluctant lips. Poirot began with Lady Eleanor Ashworth, whose pale face and nervous hands suggested she carried a heavier burden than fear of a ghost. Seated across from him, Eleanor twisted a lace handkerchief, her auburn curls catching the firelight. "Monsieur Poirot, I know you must think me hysterical after last night, but I swear I saw the phantom. It wasn't my imagination." Poirot's eyes twinkled with gentle skepticism. "Mademoiselle, I do not doubt you saw something, but tell me, this figure in white, did it move as a person might, with purpose, or was it ethereal?" Eleanor hesitated, her brow furrowing. It glided, almost floating, but it turned toward the staircase deliberately, as if it knew where it was going. I can't explain it." "Bien," Poirot said, jotting a note. "And this lavender scent, you noticed it strongly. Do you wear such a perfume, perhaps?" "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "It's not mine. It felt old, like something from another time." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "One last thing, mademoiselle. The letters your father mentioned, found in the East Wing. Did you see them before they were so burned?" Eleanor's hands stilled, her eyes darting to the window. "I glanced at them. They were love letters, from Lady Margaret to someone other than her husband. It was scandalous, so father thought it best to destroy them." Her voice wavered, and Poirot noted the slight tremor, a sign she was withholding something. "Merci, Lady Eleanor. You have been most helpful." As she left, Poirot added a note. "Letters not burned. Eleanor knows more." Next came Charles Wentworth, the solicitor, whose twitching eyelid betrayed his unease before he even sat down. His suit was immaculate, but his hands fidgeted, betraying a man accustomed to control but losing it. "Monsieur Poirot, I assure you, I have no patience for ghost stories. This phantom nonsense is a distraction from my work here." "And what work is that, Monsieur Wentworth?" Poirot asked, his tone mild but probing. Wentworth cleared his throat. "I'm revising Sir Reginald's estate papers. The Ashworth finances are complex. Old debts, property disputes, nothing to do with phantoms." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Yet you were here when the disturbances began 6 months ago. Have you seen this phantom yourself?" Wentworth's tic intensified. "Once, perhaps. A shadow in the corridor, nothing clear. I don't believe in ghosts, but this house plays tricks on the mind." "C'est curieux," Poirot mused. "A man of law, yet unsettled by shadows. Tell me, have you handled any matters concerning Lady Margaret's sapphire necklace?" Wentworth stiffened. "The necklace? It's a myth, a family legend. I deal in facts, not fairy tales." He stood abruptly, excusing himself, but Poirot noted the sweat on his brow. A nervous man, he wrote, with secrets tied to wealth. Mrs. Clara Beaumont entered next, her pearls clicking softly as she settled into the chair. Her sharp eyes met Poirot's with a boldness that contrasted her earlier displays of fear. "Monsieur Poirot, I hope you're not taken in by all this ghost talk. Someone's playing a cruel game, and I suspect it's to scare us away." "An interesting theory, madame," Poirot said. "Who might wish to drive you from Ashworth Hall?" Clara's lips pursed. "Eleanor, perhaps? She's young, headstrong, and wants the estate to herself. Or that journalist, Miss Crane. She's poking into things that don't concern her. And don't trust Henry Ashworth. He's a drunk with debts." Poirot's moustache twitched. "You are observant, madame. Have you noticed anything unusual, perhaps near the east wing?" Clara hesitated, then leaned closer. "Last week I saw someone, a figure, not the phantom, slipping into the east wing after midnight. I couldn't see who, but they carried a lantern. It wasn't a ghost, I'm sure of it." "Merci, Madame Beaumont. Your eyes are valuable." As she left, Poirot wrote, "Clara sees more than she admits. Possible witness or accomplice." Dr. Alistair. Finch was next, his scepticism as pronounced as his frown. "Monsieur Poirot, this phantom is nonsense. I've examined the servants who claim to see it. No signs of hysteria, just suggestibility. Old houses and old stories breed fear." Poirot tilted his head. "Yet you remain here, Doctor, despite your disbelief. Why?" Finch adjusted his glasses. "Sir Reginald asked me to stay to keep an eye on Eleanor. She's delicate, prone to nerves. I'm here as a friend, not a ghost hunter." "And the lavender scent?" Poirot pressed. "A medical explanation, perhaps?" Finch shrugged. "An old perfume bottle, perhaps, disturbed during renovations, nothing supernatural." Poirot nodded, unconvinced. "Skepticism too firm," he noted. "Hide something, loyalty, or guilt." Finally, Miss Violet Crane entered, her notebook clutched like a shield. Her eyes sparkled with ambition, but Poirot sensed calculation beneath her charm. "Monsieur Poirot, I've been digging into the Ashworth history. The phantom's appearances coincide with financial troubles, debts, missing heirlooms. I think someone's using the ghost to cover something up." "Mademoiselle, you are astute," Poirot said. "Have you found evidence of this cover-up?" Violet hesitated, then leaned in. "I found a ledger in the library, hidden behind a shelf. It lists payments to an unknown party, signed by Sir Reginald, dated 6 months ago. I think it's tied to the East Wing renovations." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "You will show me this ledger, oui?" She nodded, but her smile was guarded. As she left, Poirot wrote, "Violet seeks truth or fame. Ledger is key." Alone again, Poirot paced the library, his mind weaving connections. The phantom was a distraction, he was certain, but for what? Debts, a necklace, hidden letters, a figure with a lantern. The threads were tangled, but a pattern was emerging. He slipped the pearl from last night's discovery from his pocket, rolling it between his fingers. It was no ordinary pearl, he suspected, but part of a larger design. As he left the library, a faint creak echoed from the east wing. Poirot paused, his cane tapping lightly. "Pas de fantôme," he murmured, "but someone watches." The game was growing clearer, and Hercule Poirot was ready to play. Chapter 6. The Hidden Chamber. The afternoon light filtered weakly through the leaded windows of Ashworth Hall, casting a patchwork of shadows across the worn stone floors of the east wing. Hercule Poirot, his silver-topped cane in hand, moved with deliberate steps, his sharp eyes scanning the corridor where the phantom had appeared the previous night. The interviews earlier that day had confirmed his suspicions. The so-called phantom was a human construct, a veil for secrets woven into the fabric of this ancient manor. The chalk mark, the lavender-scented glass, the solitary pearl, and Miss Crane's mention of a hidden ledger all pointed to a deeper truth. Today, Poirot intended to explore the East Wing, where the disturbances and the answers seemed to converge. He had enlisted Sir Reginald's permission to examine the area, citing a need to understand the renovations that had coincided with the phantom's resurgence. Sir Reginald, weary but cooperative, had provided a key to the locked rooms, though his hesitation suggested he feared what Poirot might uncover. Accompanied by Lady Eleanor, whose nervous energy betrayed her reluctance, and Miss Violet Crane, whose journalistic zeal was barely contained, Poirot approached a heavy oak door at the end of the corridor. The air here was colder, the scent of lavender faint but persistent, mingling with the musty odour of disuse. "This part of the house hasn't been touched in years, except for the recent work," Eleanor explained, her voice tight as she unlocked the door. "The renovations were meant to restore the guest rooms, but we stopped when the disturbances began." Poirot nodded, his moustache twitching. "C'est curieux, mademoiselle. The phantom, it seems, does not approve of progress. Let us see what it guards." The door creaked open, revealing a dusty chamber filled with sheet-draped furniture and faded tapestries. The renovations had barely begun. Scaffolding stood against one wall, and a pile of broken plaster lay in a corner. Poirot's eyes darted to the far wall, where a section of panelling appeared slightly misaligned, its edges uneven as if recently disturbed. He approached, tapping the wood with his cane. A hollow echo answered. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his fingers tracing the panel's seams. "A secret, perhaps?" With a gentle push, the panel clicked and swung inward, revealing a narrow passage cloaked in darkness. Eleanor gasped, and Violet's pen scratched furiously in her notebook. "A hidden chamber!" Violet exclaimed, her eyes gleaming. "This must be where the phantom hides, or where the truth is buried." Poirot raised a hand for silence, his expression calm but alert. "We shall see, mademoiselle." "But caution, s'il vous plaît. Secrets are rarely unguarded." He produced a small flashlight from his pocket, a modern contraption he carried for just such occasions, and stepped into the passage, motioning for the women to follow. The passage was cramped, its stone walls damp and moss-covered, the air thick with the smell of earth and time. It sloped downward, leading to a small circular chamber lit only by Poirot's beam. The room was sparse, but telling. A dusty table held a cracked inkwell and a single candle, long extinguished. Against one wall stood a wooden chest, its lock rusted but intact. On the floor, faint chalk marks formed an irregular pattern, and a faint trace of lavender lingered, stronger here than in the corridor. "Interessant," Poirot said, kneeling to examine the chalk. It matched the smudge from the previous night, confirming his suspicion that the phantom's appearances were staged. He turned to the chest, testing the lock with a gentle tug. It held firm, but a glint of metal caught his eye. A key, half hidden beneath a loose stone in the wall. Eleanor's hands trembled as she watched. "Monsieur Poirot, how did you know this was here? This passage, it's not on any plans of the house." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The house, mademoiselle. It speaks to those who listen. The misaligned panel, the chalk, the scent. These are signs not of ghosts but of human intent." Violet, peering over his shoulder, pointed to the chest. "That must be where the sapphire necklace is hidden, or the letters you mentioned. Open it, Monsieur Poirot." Using the key, Poirot unlocked the chest, its hinges groaning as he lifted the lid. Inside lay a bundle of papers, yellowed with age, tied with a faded ribbon. Beside them was a small velvet pouch, its contents clinking softly. Poirot carefully untied the papers, revealing a series of letters in a delicate feminine hand. Lady Margaret's, he presumed. He scanned the first, his eyes narrowing as he read phrases of forbidden love and promises of escape, addressed to an unnamed recipient. Mon Dieu, he murmured, these are the letters Sir Reginald claimed were burned. Yet here they are, preserved like a confession. Eleanor's face paled. I didn't know they were here. Father said they were destroyed. Poirot's gaze was gentle but piercing. Perhaps, mademoiselle, your father sought to protect someone, or something, but the truth, it does not burn so easily. He opened the velvet pouch, revealing a string of pearls, not the sapphire necklace, but a match for the single pearl he had found the night before. The discovery sent a ripple of excitement through him. C'est magnifique, he said softly. The phantom leaves pearls, not sapphires. A clue, oui, but to what? Violet, scribbling notes, leaned closer. Those letters, do they mention the necklace? Or the heir Sir Reginald spoke of? Poirot shook his head. Not yet, mademoiselle, but they speak of betrayal, of a secret that could ruin the Ashworth name. I must read them carefully, in private. He pocketed the letters and pearls, noting Eleanor's anxious glance and Violet's eager curiosity. The chamber, he suspected, held more than physical clues. It was a window into a past that someone wished to keep buried. As they emerged from the passage, the house seemed to groan, a low creak echoing from the upper floors. Eleanor clutched Poirot's arm, her voice a whisper. "Did you hear that? It's her, Lady Margaret." Poirot patted her hand, his tone calm. "No, mademoiselle, it is the house, or perhaps someone who wishes us to believe in ghosts. Fear not, Hercule Poirot is here." Back in the library, Poirot secured the letters and pearls in his locked suitcase, his mind racing. The hidden chamber confirmed his theory. The phantom was a tool, wielded by someone with intimate knowledge of Ashworth Hall's secrets. Was it Eleanor, hiding her father's lies? Violet, chasing a sensational story? Or another yet unseen player? The letters would reveal more, but for now, Poirot knew he had stirred the hornet's nest. The phantom would strike again, and he would be ready. As he prepared for dinner, a faint whisper of lavender drifted through his room, and a shadow flickered past his window. Poirot smiled, undaunted. "Pas de fantôme," he murmured, "only the truth, waiting to be unmasked." Chapter 7. Shadows in the Garden. The evening air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming roses, as Hercule Poirot stepped into the gardens of Ashworth Hall, his polished shoes crunching softly on the gravel path. The discovery of the hidden chamber earlier that day had set his little grey cells ablaze, each clue, the letters, the pearls, the chalk marks, pointing to a human hand behind the phantom's veil. The letters, now locked in his suitcase, hinted at a scandal that could unravel the Ashworth legacy. But Poirot needed more. The gardens, with their overgrown hedges and shadowed corners, seemed a likely stage for the phantom's next act, and he was determined to be present when it appeared. Dinner had been a tense affair, the guests' strange smiles betraying their unease. Lady Eleanor had barely spoken, her eyes darting to the windows as if expecting a spectral visitor. Charles Wentworth's nervous tic had worsened, his fork trembling as he ate. Mrs. Clara Beaumont had prattled about the weather, her sharp gaze missing nothing, while Dr. Alistair Finch maintained his sceptical scowl. Miss Violet Crane, ever the journalist, had peppered Poirot with questions about the hidden chamber, which he deflected with polite ambiguity. Henry Ashworth, flushed with whisky, had muttered about curses, and Miss Beatrice Lyle had remained silent, her quiet presence almost forgotten. Poirot had excused himself early, claiming a need for fresh air, but in truth he was hunting clues. The gardens were a labyrinth of manicured lawns and wilder patches, the latter tangled with ivy and thorns. A stone fountain, its basin cracked and moss-covered, stood at the centre, its trickle barely audible. Over the rustling leaves, the fog had lifted slightly, but the moon cast an eerie glow, turning the shrubs into looming shapes. Poirot's flashlight beam danced across the ground, searching for signs of disturbance. He recalled Mrs. Beaumont's claim of seeing a figure with a lantern in the east wing. Perhaps the gardens, too, held secrets. As he rounded a hedge, a soft thud broke the silence, followed by a stifled gasp. Poirot froze, his senses alert, and crept towards the sound. Near a crumbling stone bench, he spotted a figure crouched in the shadows, their back to him. The figure wore a dark cloak, but a faint glint of white fabric peeked out, and the air carried a trace of lavender. Poirot's heart quickened, not with fear, but with anticipation. He stepped forward, his cane tapping lightly to announce his presence. "Bonsoir," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Is it not late for a stroll, monsieur or madame?" The figure started, spinning to face him. It was Miss Beatrice Lyle, her pale face framed by a hood, her hands clutching a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Her eyes widened, but she quickly composed herself, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Monsieur Poirot, you startled me. I couldn't sleep, so I came out to clear my mind." Poirot's moustache twitched. "C'est curieux, mademoiselle. The gardens, they are not so restful at night, no? And this bundle, what does it contain?" Beatrice hesitated, then unwrapped the cloth, revealing a small gardening trowel and a vial of liquid that shimmered in the moonlight. "Just tools," she said quickly. "I help with the roses sometimes. The vial is fertilizer." Poirot took the vial, holding it to the light. The liquid was clear, with a faint lavender scent. "Fertilizer, you say?" "Mon Dieu, it smells remarkably like the Phantom's perfume." He fixed her with a piercing gaze. "Perhaps you have seen this Phantom, mademoiselle." Beatrice's cheeks flushed, but she met his eyes. "I've seen shadows, nothing more. This house makes everyone jumpy. I'm no exception." Before Poirot could press further, a piercing cry echoed from the direction of the fountain. Beatrice dropped the trowel, and Poirot turned, his flashlight sweeping the darkness. He hurried toward the sound, Beatrice trailing reluctantly behind. At the fountain, they found Henry Ashworth, sprawled on the grass, his whiskey flask spilled beside him. His face was ashen, his eyes wide with terror. "It was her," he slurred, pointing towards the hedge. "The Phantom, white gown, glowing eyes. She pushed me." Poirot knelt beside him, noting the grass stains on Henry's coat and a faint chalk mark on his sleeve. "Monsieur, you are unharmed, oui? Describe this figure." Henry's voice shook. "She came out of nowhere, gliding like mist. I tried to run, but she shoved me. Cold hands like death itself." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Interessant. And this chalk on your sleeve, did the Phantom leave it?" He pointed to the mark which matched those found in the corridor and hidden chamber. Henry blinked, confused. I don't know. I didn't notice." Beatrice, hovering nearby, spoke softly. "He's drunk, Monsieur Poirot. He probably tripped and imagined the rest." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, mademoiselle, but the chalk, it does not imagine itself." He helped Henry to his feet, guiding him back toward the house, where lights were beginning to flicker as the household stirred. Sir Reginald and Eleanor appeared at the garden door, their faces etched with concern. "What's happened?" Sir Reginald demanded. "Henry, are you hurt?" "Just shaken," Poirot answered. "For him. An encounter with the phantom, it seems. May, I begin to think this phantom is fond of leaving traces. Chalk, lavender, and perhaps something more." As they returned to the hall, Poirot's mind raced. The lavender vial in Beatrice's possession was no fertilizer. It was likely the source of the phantom's scent. The chalk on Henry's sleeve linked the garden incident to the earlier sightings. And Beatrice's presence in the shadows, her nervous demeanour, suggested she knew more than she admitted. Was she the phantom, or merely a pawn in a larger scheme? In the drawing-room, Poirot gathered the guests who had been roused by the commotion. He held up the vial, its contents glinting in the firelight. "This," he said, "was found in the garden, where Monsieur Henri claims the phantom attacked. It smells of lavender, the scent of our ghostly visitor. Who among you uses such a perfume?" Silence fell, broken only by Mrs. Beaumont's sharp intake of breath. "Not I," she said, her pearls clicking nervously. Eleanor shook her head, and Violet Crane scribbled furiously, her eyes darting to Beatrice, who remained silent. Poirot's gaze swept the room. "The phantom, it leaves clues, too many perhaps. A ghost does not need lavender or chalk. A human, however, does. And I, Hercule Poirot, will find this human." As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes on Beatrice, who avoided his gaze. The gardens had revealed another piece of the puzzle, but the picture was still incomplete. The phantom was growing bolder, and Poirot sensed danger looming. He murmured to himself, "Pas de fantôme, only shadows, and shadows always lead to light." Chapter 8. The Crumbling Alibis. The morning following the garden incident at Ashworth Hall was cloaked in a damp mist that seemed to seep into the very walls, mirroring the unease that gripped the household. Hercule Poirot sat in the library, his tisane cooling beside him, his notebook filled with meticulous notes. The chalk marks, the lavender vial, the pearls, the hidden letters, and now Henry Ashworth's drunken encounter with the so-called phantom. Each clue pointed to a human orchestrating the hauntings, but the motive remained elusive. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with anticipation. He was close to unravelling the truth, and today he would test the alibis of those who claimed innocence. The guests gathered in the drawing-room at Poirot's request, their faces a gallery of tension and suspicion. Sir Reginald stood by the fireplace, his silver hair dishevelled, his authority fraying. Lady Eleanor twisted her handkerchief, her eyes red-rimmed, as if she hadn't slept. Charles Wentworth's eyelid twitched incessantly, his hands clasped tightly to still their trembling. Mrs. Clara Beaumont clutched her pearls, her sharp gaze darting between faces. Dr. Alistair Finch maintained his sceptical frown, though his fingers drummed nervously on his chair. Miss Violet Crane, notebook in hand, watched with predatory curiosity, while Henry Ashworth nursed a headache, his whisky flask absent for once. Miss Beatrice Lyle sat quietly, her pale face unreadable, but Poirot noted the way her hands gripped her skirt. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. "Last night's incident in the garden has confirmed what I suspected. The phantom of Ashworth Hall is no ghost, but a deception. Chalk, lavender, pearls. These are the tools of a human hand. I wish to clarify your movements last night, to separate truth from fiction." A murmur rippled through the group, but none protested. Poirot turned to Henry first, his gaze piercing. "Monsieur Ashworth, you claim the phantom pushed you." Yet your sleeve bore chalk and you smelled of lavender. Where were you before the garden?" Henry flushed, his voice hoarse. "I was in my room, drinking, alone. I went to the garden for air. That's when I saw her, the figure in white. I swear it." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Curieux, the lavender vial found in the garden, does it belong to you?" "No," Henry snapped, then faltered. I don't know how it got there. Maybe the phantom dropped it." Poirot nodded, unconvinced, and turned to Beatrice. "Mademoiselle Lyle, you were in the garden with a trowel and a vial of lavender-scented liquid. You claimed it was fertilizer, yet it matches the phantom's scent. Explain." Beatrice's hands tightened, but her voice was steady. "I told you, I help with the roses. The vial is an old perfume I use to mask the smell of compost. I was tending the garden, nothing more." "Yet you were near the fountain when Monsieur Henri fell," Poirot pressed. "Did you see this phantom?" Beatrice hesitated, her eyes flickering to Eleanor. "Number the one I heard Henry's cry, but I saw only shadows." Poirot's gaze shifted to Eleanor. "Mademoiselle Ashworth, you were quick to arrive at the garden door. Where were you when the cry was heard?" Eleanor's cheeks paled. "In my room, reading. I heard Henry and ran downstairs. I didn't see the phantom, but I felt a chill, like before." Poirot noted her hesitation, then turned to Mrs. Beaumont. "Madame, you claim to have seen a figure with a lantern in the east wing. Last night, did you see anything unusual?" Clara's pearls clicked as she straightened. "I was in bed, but I heard footsteps in the corridor around midnight. I looked out and saw nothing, but the air was cold, and I smelled lavender again." Dr. Finch snorted. "More nonsense. I was in my room, sleeping, and heard nothing until the commotion. This is all hysteria, Poirot." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "Yet hysteria does not leave chalk marks. Monsieur Wentworth, your turn." Wentworth's tic worsened. "I was in the study, working on estate papers. I heard the cry and joined the others. I saw no phantom, no lavender, nothing." Poirot paced, slowly, his cane tapping the floor. "Mon Dieu, such consistency, yet such contradiction. Let us try a small experiment." He produced the pearl from the corridor and the string of pearls from the hidden chamber, holding them up. "These were found where the phantom appeared. Do they belong to anyone here?" A collective intake of breath followed. Clara's hand flew to her own pearls, but she shook her head. "Mine are different. Those look old." Eleanor's eyes widened, but she said nothing. Violet Crane leaned forward, her pen poised. "Are those Lady Margaret's pearls, from the hidden chamber?" Poirot smiled enigmatically. "Perhaps, mademoiselle, but they tell a story, oui? A story of someone who moves in the night, leaving traces to frighten or distract." He turned to Sir Reginald. "Monsieur, you claimed the letters were burned, yet I found them. Why lie?" Sir Reginald's face reddened. I wanted to protect Eleanor. The letters suggested a scandal, an illegitimate heir. I thought it best to bury the past." Poirot nodded, then addressed the group. "Someone here is using the phantom to hide a truth, perhaps about the sapphire necklace, perhaps about this heir. I propose a test. Tonight, I will watch the east wing. If the phantom appears, I will confront it." A tense silence fell, broken by Violet's sharp voice. "I'll join you, Monsieur Poirot. I want the truth for my story." "No, mademoiselle," Poirot said firmly. "This is a task for Poirot alone, but rest assured, the truth will be revealed." As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes on Beatrice, whose quiet demeanour seemed a mask for something deeper. He slipped into the east wing, inspecting the corridor again. Near the staircase, he found another clue. A scrap of white fabric, torn and smudged with chalk, caught on a nail. He pocketed it, his mind racing. The alibis were crumbling, each guest revealing cracks in their stories. Beatrice's lavender, Henry's chalk-stained sleeve, Eleanor's evasions, Sir Reginald's lies, all pointed to a conspiracy, but the motive remained just out of reach. That evening, as the house settled into an uneasy quiet, Poirot positioned himself in the shadows of the east wing, his flashlight dimmed, his senses alert. The air was heavy, the scent of lavender faint but present. A soft creak sounded from the staircase, and Poirot's heart quickened. "Pas de fantôme," he whispered, gripping his cane. "Only the truth, and Hercule Poirot will find it." Chapter 9. The Gathering Storm. The air in Ashworth Hall crackled with tension as the evening of Poirot's vigil in the East Wing approached. The revelations of the day, the crumbling alibis, the scrap of white fabric, the persistent lavender scent, and the hidden letters had tightened the web of suspicion around the household. Hercule Poirot, seated in the drawing-room, sipped his tisane, his sharp eyes observing the guests as they gathered for dinner. The storm outside mirrored the one brewing within. Thunder rumbled over the Yorkshire moors, and lightning cast fleeting shadows across the room, illuminating faces taut with fear and secrecy. Poirot knew the phantom would strike again tonight, and he was ready to pull the threads of this mystery taut. The dinner table was a study in unease. Sir Reginald Ashworth, at the head, picked at his food, his silver hair dishevelled, his authority eroded by Poirot's probing. Lady Eleanor, pale and silent, avoided her father's gaze, her hands twisting a napkin into knots. Charles Wentworth's eyelid twitched relentlessly, his fork scraping against his plate. Mrs. Clara Beaumont, her pearls gleaming, spoke in clipped tones about trivialities, her eyes darting to the windows. Dr. Alistair Finch maintained his sceptical air, but his fingers gripped his wine-glass too tightly. Miss Violet Crane scribbled notes between bites, her ambition palpable, while Henry Ashworth, sober for once, stared into his plate as if it held answers. Miss Beatrice Lyle, quiet as ever, seemed to shrink into her chair, but Poirot noted her watchful gaze. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the strained silence. "Tonight I shall keep watch in the East Wing, where our phantom is so fond of appearing. The clues, chalk, lavender, pearls, fabric, point to a human hand. I invite you to remain vigilant, for the truth is close." A murmur of unease followed. Violet Crane leaned forward, her pen poised. "Monsieur Poirot, do you think the phantom is one of us, or a servant, perhaps?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "The phantom, mademoiselle, is clever but careless. It leaves traces, and traces led to truth. I ask only that you remain in your rooms tonight, unless you wish to confess now." No one spoke, but the air grew heavier, as if the storm outside had seeped into the room. As dinner ended, Poirot excused himself, slipping into the East Wing with his flashlight and cane. The corridor was dark, the air cold and tinged with lavender. He positioned himself in an alcove near the grand staircase, hidden by a tapestry, his senses alert. The house creaked under the storm's assault, each sound a potential clue. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the howl of the wind and the occasional crack of thunder. Then, just past midnight, a faint glow appeared at the corridor's end, a lantern, its light flickering as a figure moved toward the staircase. Poirot's heart quickened, but he remained still, his eyes narrowing. The figure wore a white gown, its edges trailing like mist, and it moved with deliberate grace, as if performing for an unseen audience. The scent of lavender grew stronger, and a soft whisper, almost a moan, echoed through the hall. Poirot stepped from the alcove, his voice sharp. "Arrêtez! Show yourself, or face Hercule Poirot!" The figure froze, then spun, the lantern dropping with a clatter. Our light revealed not a ghost, but a human face. Beatrice Lyle, her pale features twisted in panic. The white gown was a nightdress, dusted with chalk, and her hands clutched a small vial, its lavender scent unmistakable. "Mademoiselle Lyle," Poirot said, his tone calm but unyielding, "you are the phantom, oui? Or perhaps one of its puppets?" Beatrice's eyes darted, seeking escape, but the corridor offered none. I didn't mean harm," she stammered. "It was a prank to scare Henry. He's been cruel, threatening to sell the estate. I wanted to frighten him off." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "A prank? With chalk, lavender, and pearls? No, mademoiselle, this is no jest. The letters, the necklace. Someone uses you to hide a greater truth. Speak!" Before Beatrice could answer, a scream pierced the air, this time from the grand hall below. Poirot seized the lantern, motioning for Beatrice to follow as he hurried down the staircase. In the hall, they found Eleanor crumpled on the floor, a candelabrum overturned beside her. Her face was ashen, her eyes wide with terror. "It was her, Lady Margaret. She touched me, cold as death." Sir Reginald and the others rushed in, drawn by the scream. Poirot knelt beside Eleanor, noting a fresh chalk mark on her sleeve, and a single pearl clutched in her hand. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the phantom is busy tonight." He turned to Beatrice, who trembled under his gaze. "Mademoiselle, you were in the East Wing, yet the phantom strikes here. Explain." Beatrice's voice was barely a whisper. "I swear, it wasn't me this time. I only staged the appearances before, to protect the family. Someone else, someone knows." Poirot stood, addressing the group. "Mesdames et messieurs, the phantom is no ghost, but a tool of deception. Tonight it has overplayed its hand. I have seen its face, and I have clues, letters, pearls, fabric, chalk. Tomorrow, in this room, I shall reveal the truth. Until then, lock your doors." The guests exchanged fearful glances, but none spoke. As they dispersed, Poirot pocketed the pearl, his mind racing. Beatrice's confession was partial. She was a pawn, not the mastermind. The letters suggested an heir, the necklace a motive, and the phantom a distraction. Someone else was pulling the strings, and Poirot suspected they were desperate to keep their secret hidden. He returned to his room, locking the door behind him. The storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the portrait of Lady Margaret in the hall, her eyes seeming to follow him. He opened his notebook, adding the night's events. Beatrice's role, Eleanor's encounter, the recurring clues. The puzzle was nearly complete, but one piece remained elusive, the motive that tied it all together. As he extinguished his candle, a faint creak sounded outside his door, followed by the whisper of lavender. Poirot smiled in the darkness. "Pas de fantôme," he murmured, "only a storm, and Hercule Poirot will calm it." Chapter 10. The Phantom Unmasked. The morning sun broke through the storm clouds, casting a pale light over Ashworth Hall, but the atmosphere within remained heavy with anticipation. Hercule Poirot had summoned the household to the drawing-room, where the grand fireplace crackled, its warmth doing little to ease the chill of suspicion. The guests assembled, their faces a mix of dread and curiosity. Sir Reginald Ashworth, weary and drawn. Lady Eleanor, her eyes red-rimmed. Charles Wentworth, his tic betraying his nerves, Mrs. Clara Beaumont clutching her pearls, Dr. Alistair Finch, sceptical yet tense, Miss Violet Crane, notebook ready, Henry Ashworth, sober but shaken, and Miss Beatrice Lyle, pale and silent after her partial confession. The servants, Reynolds, Mrs. Dobbs, and the maids, stood at the back, their presence a reminder of the house's many eyes and ears. Poirot stood before the fireplace, his small stature commanding the room, his moustache impeccably waxed, his eyes gleaming with the clarity of resolution. In his hands, he held the clues that had unravelled the mystery. The bundle of Lady Margaret's letters, the string of pearls, the scrap of white fabric, the lavender vial, and a small chalk stick. The air was thick with expectation, the storm's aftermath leaving only the faint patter of rain against the windows. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice steady and resonant, "you have gathered to learn the truth behind the phantom of Ashworth Hall. For days I have observed, listened, and let my little grey cells work. There is no ghost here, only a deception woven to conceal a secret of greed, betrayal, and a past that refuses to stay buried." He held up the letters, their yellowed pages crackling. "These, found in the hidden chamber, are Lady Margaret Ashworth's letters, written in 1823 to a lover, not her husband. They speak of a child, an heir born in secret, sent away to avoid scandal. This heir, I deduced, is the key to the phantom's purpose." Sir Reginald's face paled, but he said nothing. Poirot continued, turning to the pearls. "These pearls, found in the corridor and the chamber, are not Lady Margaret's sapphire necklace, but they belong to her, a gift to her child, hidden with the letters. Someone knew of their existence and used them to create the phantom's myth." He paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor. "The chalk marks, the lavender scent, the white gown, these were tools of a masquerade. Miss Beatrice Lyle confessed to staging some appearances, claiming it was to scare Monsieur Henri from selling the estate. But no, Beatrice was a pawn, used by another to distract from a greater truth." Beatrice's head bowed, her hands trembling. Poirot's gaze softened, but he pressed on. "The phantom's appearances began 6 months ago, when renovations uncovered the hidden chamber. Someone feared the letters would reveal the heir, threatening the Ashworth fortune. But who?" He turned to Charles Wentworth, whose tic worsened under the scrutiny. "Monsieur Wentworth, you are the solicitor, privy to the estate's finances. You claim to work on papers, but I found a ledger, thanks to Mademoiselle Crane, showing payments to an unknown party, signed by you, not Sir Reginald. These payments began when the disturbances started. Why?" Wentworth stammered, sweat beading on his brow. I was managing debts, nothing more. The estate is in trouble, and I acted to protect it." "No," Poirot said sharply. "You acted to protect yourself. You discovered the letters during the renovations and learned of the heir. You sought to find this heir, or their descendants, to secure a share of the estate, or to silence them." The room gasped, but Poirot raised a hand. "Yet you are not the phantom's mastermind. You are too nervous, too clumsy. The phantom required cunning, and that brings me to Madame Beaumont." Clara's pearls clicked as she straightened, her eyes narrowing. "Me? That's absurd, Monsieur Poirot." "Pas du tout," Poirot replied. "You claimed to see a figure with a lantern, but you were too quick to describe the phantom's lavender scent, its cold touch. You knew the vial's contents because you supplied it to Beatrice, oui? You, a cousin with no claim to the estate, saw an opportunity. The letters they hinted at an heir, and you feared losing your place here. You orchestrated the phantom to frighten the family, to delay the renovations, to keep the secret buried. Clara's face flushed, but she held his gaze. You have no proof. Poirot held up the white fabric. This, torn from a gown in your wardrobe, was found in the east wing. The chalk on Henry's sleeve matches the stick in your room. And the pearl Eleanor held last night. You dropped it, madame, in your haste to stage the phantom's attack. Eleanor gasped, clutching the pearl she still held. Clara, is it true? Clara's composure cracked, her voice rising. I did it for the family. The heir would ruin us, take everything. I used Beatrice to create the ghost, yes, but only to protect our legacy. Poirot shook his head. No, madame. You protected your own interests. The sapphire necklace, a myth you fueled, was a distraction. The real treasure was the letters, proving an heir who could claim the estate. You hoped to find them, destroy them, or profit from them. He turned to Sir Reginald. Monsieur, you lied about burning the letters to protect Eleanor, but you suspected Clara's scheme. You invited me, oui? The anonymous letter was yours, to uncover the truth without exposing your family. Sir Reginald nodded, his voice heavy. I feared Clara was manipulating us. I couldn't bear another scandal. Poirot faced the group, his voice triumphant. The phantom is unmasked. Clara Beaumont, with Beatrice as her unwitting tool. The letters will be examined, the heir traced, and justice served. The past is no longer hidden. The room erupted in murmurs, Clara's protests drowned by the weight of Poirot's deductions. Beatrice wept softly, relieved to be free of her role. Violet Crane scribbled furiously, her story secured. Eleanor embraced her father, tears in her eyes. As the authorities were called to handle Clara, Poirot stepped to the window, gazing at the clearing sky. The storm had passed, and with it the phantom's shadow. He murmured, Pas de fantôme, only the truth, and Hercule Poirot has found it.